Gabby, I'm so excited well, first off, thank you so much for
Of course.
being here and for doing me time, and, I have a lot I wanna ask you or about your me time, but I also, I wanna start with first off, you're a powerhouse in so many ways, um, she says. Yes, you are, and I love your podcast.
Thank you.
And I'm curious what inspired you. I mean, I think you're all about what I loved about it was one of the things you said, we're all out here like sort of we're all where we are doing the best we can, which is a beautiful thing that I think we forget sometimes. But
Yeah.
I loved listening. You go in. These interviews are like legit. Like you're going way into I listened to the one on addiction. I listened to Marianne Williamson as well. I was like, Gabby doesn't shy away from anything, and I love that.
Well, I shy away a little bit from things that I don't feel like I can get to the bottom of, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the truth be told, I think when I ask people questions, especially let's say if I happen to know them or I know something, what I'll do at times, this is just being forthcoming, that I'll I'll sort of throw something out there, and then if they want to share, like I've had friends who've had medical issues or whatever, and some
Mm,
will say, "Well, yes, I just recovered from cancer," and others won't go into it, but they'll sort of say their skills that they used to handle, I put in quotes, difficulties. So
right,
I want to go in and have an honest conversation, but I'm also not a person, and it's like in my real life too. I don't really want to unearth things that you don't genuinely want to talk about. I don't want to BS,
right.
but so it's a fine line, right?
I think it takes a certain kind of person, though, to understand and read and intuit what that is, which I anyway, so that says a lot about you as well. But and that's also caring for your guests. Um, but I wanna know what inspired, you after I mean, you have so many things you're doing, so many things going on to start this podcast, along with everything else. Like what made you kind of say like, "Oh, I wanna bring this to everybody."
Well, I think, if you wanna go back to, like, 1993, I used
Let's do
to
it. Let's
I
do it.
used to were you even born? I used to interview athletes. I used to be on a show called MTV Sports, and I would interview athletes, and then it developed into other things, and so I think actually I've always enjoyed talking to people and learning from them,
Right.
and the flip side of that is earlier in my career, it was sort of me centric. And so, yeah, it's fine to be interviewed, but there was something really interesting for me about being the person to navigate that versus the center, because my story is the same and I'm trying to add to my story as I go through life. But ultimately, it's sort of, I don't want to be on repeat. I'm looking for new input and new experiences and new information. And so by talking to other people. So I used to do a podcast with Neil Strauss years ago, in a sauna. We called it the Truth Barrel, and that was great.
In a sauna?
Yeah, because we joke that when you go in the sauna, we used to start calling it the Truth Barrel because you'd have these really intense 10 to 15-minute conversations with your friends. I
Yeah.
mean, you're sweating, you're hot, you're uncomfortable, you're almost naked. So it's sort of like there it is.
Yeah.
And so Neil and I were doing that, and that was great. But we have crazy schedules, and so I took off for more than a year, and I didn't. I had to really think about, was I going to be able to bring something to the table and really sustain it and do a good job. And then when I sort of felt like, you know what, just do the best you can, and to that point, do your homework, be prepared, use the skill set, whatever version of that you've developed over the years, and also simultaneously, and I know you might relate to this, every time I go into an interview, I go, "Well, I hope it goes well." And every time it's done, I'm like, "I hope there was real takeaways for the audience." And then all along with that is trusting your own way that you do it,
Right.
and appreciating the way other people do it,
Yeah.
and really staying true to your own voice, because that's what we all bring, right? Like, we're all contributing who we are. So it's the learning, I call it forced learning. I'm reading, like, right now, I have this woman that's on my desk called, Susan Casey. It's a new
Uh-huh.
book out called The Underworld. So it's like I'll be reading that, I'll be reading all these other books. So I like the forced learning component.
I love that. I so relate to the interview part. Devin can speak to that because Devin is our producer. She's also listening on here. I call her after every recording, and I'm like, "Well?"
Yeah.
Um, but, of course, but it's funny because part of this podcast that I started was it's kind of like twofold. Like the first, I'm so interested in how what people do in their time, whether alone or whatever it is that they do to restore themselves and come back to themselves and take their me time, as I call it. And I also like talking to experts, which is sort of like part of my me time. I call it talking with the experts of like the learning, like things
Mhm.
I might want to learn about. That's also how I spend part of my me time is like, oh, I don't know about this. I know this much, but I want to bring somebody on who can teach me or tell me about these things. And it's so much fun to
Mhm.
talk to people. But I also this topic of me time, which I want to get into with you, even though I have what I feel like is many questions. But as well, first off, when I say like me time to you, I always say this to people. What does me time mean to you? Like, I always say it's like this time where we come back to ourselves or maybe recharge, but it literally could be like scrolling through your phone at the end of the day and like looking at cute dog videos. But what
Right.
does me time mean to you? Like, if I say that to you, what's Gabby's me time look
You
like?
know, it's an interesting question in a lot of ways because I think I might view it in sort of a few different ways.
Yeah.
So, first of all, like what chapter are we in our lives? When my kids were very little, me time was like literally a 15-minute shower where I would just kind of linger a little longer just to kind of, I'm an only child, and so it was sort of like just to be
Mhm.
alone.
Yeah.
And so if I sort of say the overview of me time, it would be that me time is that am I spending time with the people I wanna be with and solving the problems in my work life that I wanna be solving. So I think
Mhm.
very early on, I decided that the ultimate me time was gonna be that my job was gonna be something I wanted to do,
Mhm.
and, um, that was sort of reflected in corners of my life so that I was in sort of throughout my day still myself, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. So you were
Not to
picking kind of a wide,
compartmentalize it, but it was
right.
like, okay, there I am as an athlete or as at the time, a college student. I worked in fashion. And then, okay, moving into relationships that ultimately it's sort of reflecting something about me
Yeah.
that feels genuine to who I am, right?
So
Not
you
perfect,
right.
not whatever. So I think in a way I take that serious, like this
Yeah.
idea of me time.
Yeah.
And then if we sort of get tactical on it, like I said, when my kids were little, it was very different. It was just like a few minutes alone.
Yeah.
Just
I hear a lot of parents say this, like
yeah,
parents
just
say every
check
now
in with
for little
yourself.
ones. Yeah.
Like, how's it all going? Have you spent enough time with your partner? What's going on in work? Are you need to pivot or, kind of recalibrate the direction you're heading professionally? How's it going with your kids? Have you noticed anything? Just sort of that check in with instead of everything the insanity always coming at you, you just get that
Right.
moment to do a survey and an overview of what's going on and within yourself.
Yeah.
And now it's very different. Now my youngest kid is going into 11th grade. Um, and so I think because I selfishly have had all this, and I put in air quotes, me time, my career, my
Mm.
relationship,
Mhm.
I almost need less of it.
That's interesting because I have heard this a lot from
Mhm.
people, especially post, like, pandemic, that we talk about how, like, your me time can also be connection and connecting with people. It doesn't necessarily always have to be alone. I usually actually start this by saying, because you were talking about kids and sort of the overview, and I think we have a lot of these. I think this shifts and changes throughout our lives, what that need is or what that thing is that sort of brings us back to ourself,
Mhm.
and, like, where we recharge so that we can be, as you said, like, for our work, for our relationship, for our people, how can we still show up in the way we wanna show up and in an authentic way as well that
Right.
is not forced or whatever. So, I call these, like, moments of impact, these moments in our lives, these moments of impact where you kind of are changed forever from a moment. It can be joyous, like your child being born, like whatever, but and we have, I think, a lot of them.
Mhm.
But if you can think of like sort of one where it was like, oh, this thing happened and you almost knew in the moment, like you almost knew the change, like, and it shifted the course just a little bit or maybe a lot. And it
Right.
shifted how you got to know yourself. I've like, when I talk to people, Okay, for the most part, I feel like when I talk about me time with people or like a period of time where people spent getting to know themselves, usually seems to come off of something kind of major that happens in their life where they are, like, forced in a way almost to get to know themselves in a much deeper way, and sometimes, like I said, it is joyous, but a lot of times when I talk to people, it's actually something that was a bit, like, difficult or a bit,
Yeah.
just that moment you know is gonna change. So, moment of impact, if you don't mind sharing, like, or you can think of one,
Yeah.
because we have so many, that kinda changed the shape, course, and put you in a position to, like, get to know yourself on a deeper level.
I think I've had a few, and obviously somehow we seem to imprint the hard ones
I know.
sometimes more than the joyous ones. So, and this is simply recall. This isn't, I'm not looking, this is something I've dealt with. But when I was 2, my mother, was quite young. I ended up living with a family for 5 years, and during that time, I was not living with either one of my parents, and
So
actually when I
different
was
family.
5. Huh?
Uh-huh. Did you say a different family? You were living with a family?
Yes, so
Okay.
there was a couple that my mom was, like, teenage friends with,
Mhm.
and so I was separated from both my parents, and actually during that time, my father passed away in a plane crash, okay? So, the only reason I bring this up is because there was something in that I think really impacted me, and sort of how, and in some ways not good, hypervigilant or hyper alert
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
became. So there's people will say, "Well, it's amazing. How can you go like do all these things in your career?" And I used to joke and say like, "Well, fear, right?" Because you're sort of looking at the landscape and again, a hyper vigilant, which you
Yeah,
have to deal with at some point.
yeah.
So I'll use that as one example, and I only bring that up because out of that came a lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff,
Wow.
right? Stuff to improve upon as an adult, like certain emotional, responses to something like that, attachment styles, whatever. But I
Yeah.
will say, and I only bring that up because again, so many good things came out of that, and I had to learn also how to keep what was good and then offload the stuff that I didn't need anymore as a
How did
grown up.
you know? How did you know that or when did you know? Because if this happens at 2, it's
Sure.
something you kind of learn you would maybe learn later, because unless you have the memory or have, like, some kind of, someone retelling the story, whatever, that, like, triggers a memory, like, what how did you know, like, "Oh, I this impacted me, like, I'm reacting to something that impacted me from when I was 2." Like, what made you kind of explore that or know that?
I don't think it was conscious until later. I think it
Right.
became a gear. So,
Mm,
and by nature, my nature is pretty disciplined and
mm,
pretty organized. And so I put that on, 10 where because I was looking for some kind of security, right? So, what does that look like? So it looks like when I have the opportunity to play sports, I am now part of something.
mm,
Okay, so you're always looking kind of for a family.
mhm.
At that time, especially when I got serious in sports, I was 15, I was 6'3" already. So, imagine
Yeah.
it sort of gave me this family and tribe.
Mhm,
I had a coach, so this sort of figure of stability and guidance,
mhm.
which so I responded heavily to that.
Right.
So, there was something really good for me and productive, because that's the thing is we all have things that could really work in our favor or work against us depending on what environment we get to express it. So that was sort of one I really remember. And then obviously meeting my husband in a positive way was something that really changed, I think, the trajectory of my life.
Mm,
So if I talk about monumental, and then on a more recent and adult time, one of my daughters went through a very, very challenging and hard time when she was about 13.
mm,
And I didn't have and I was a fully formed adult. I was in my 40s. And so I didn't have the tools for this, and here I was sort of this, and again, when I say this, it's sort of the external observation of like hyper capable. I've already had some
mm,
mini successes in the world.
mm.
You sort of think you know stuff, whatever that is.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but sometimes you're going to go through things, and also you're going to make all the steps to avoid it, and stuff's still going to happen.
And mhm.
So you think, "Oh, I have a good I work on my relationship," and, and I had, Laird and I've had, I sort of say 2 occasions in our relationship where it was like, "Ooh, are they gonna make it?"
Mhm.
And, we developed the skill set, but I'm only sharing the one with my daughter because um, I got really flipped upside down and I didn't know. And I remember clear as day when it happened, because she sort of said, like, "Hey, I have these, thoughts and this happened to me and kind of all this heavy stuff." And I remember going up into my bathroom, literally looking into my own eyeball in the mirror. And I said to myself, you have to keep it together
Oh.
because I knew it was something if I wasn't really paying attention
Mhm.
it could take you down a little bit or temporarily.
Mhm.
So with that, I made some wrong turns on getting advice and then finally got
Mm.
some right turns. You kinda go through that process, like, "Is this
Mhm.
the right? Oh, that's not the right thing." And then,
Right.
I was introduced, actually to Byron Katie. She has a program called The Work. And,
Right.
listen, through time, things worked out, and my daughter is thriving, and it's many years later. But this was monumental because it changed who I was on a fundamental level as a human being because I have a very strong linear kind of way, even though I'm very open minded.
Yeah.
And what it taught me was sort of this when people talk about surrender or
Yeah.
you're not in control, this really did it for me. And so it was this next opportunity as a person to go now through the next part of my adult life with just a little bit of a softer,
Mm.
way and also I'm not gonna be scared of things before they happen. I think Katie calls it past futuring.
Yeah.
I'm just trying my best to respond to what is and not what I, think. So imagine that's that conflict with that hypervigilance.
Of course, you're
So
always
I
aware of everything all the time so you can be prepared, so you
right.
can
And
predict if you need to
it's a
and control if you need to. Yeah.
right, and it's a real waste of time and energy, and it
Right.
really wears on us, and I think it keeps us, with that openness and that
Yeah.
receptiveness, and also it can be sort of like, you waste so much time and energy on that. So I would say that that was something that really helped me be different.
Wow, it's and that is fairly recent, I would say, for, like, moments
Yeah,
of
the last,
impact in
like,
your life. Yeah.
6 years, and let's say we kind of finished it about, 3 or 4 years, but it's ongoing, right? Like,
Right.
being a parent or being a partner or anything is ongoing.
Yeah.
We don't hit the bullseye and be like, "I'm good," it's like training. It's sort of
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
So it's, you pay attention to your old mechanisms.
Mhm.
You watch and you go, "Oh, look at that." And it was very helpful. Nothing like someone that you love that much to help you change yourself.
I mean, and how do you know? So you're like, "All right, Gabby, I gotta keep it together." You gotta keep it together.
Yeah,
Like, you seem to have a very like, you seem to have a good relationship, like, you know yourself pretty well. Like, you know your alignment at least, or, like, when you're off. It sounds like just from when you're saying, like, "Oh, Gabby, you have to keep it together right now." You know you're about to, like, fall
yeah,
apart. How do you how what what is a sign for you that's like, "I'm off. I'm off it right now. I'm whatever this alignment is with myself, like, I'm off it right now, and I need to get back to it." Like,
yeah.
when do you kinda know, like, "All right, my tank's kind of on empty or I'm a little bit off." When do you know that? And also, what do you do to kind of, like, snap yourself back into here? 'Cause you said you right now, your practice is, like, being in the now versus, like, the future tripping. So how do you kind of know that even in the little steps on, like, a day-to-day basis, like traffic or, like,
So,
whatever?
okay,
Yeah,
there's a couple things, that I know about myself, and I go, "Oh, look at that," And that's the other thing is I have a decent ability, not perfect, to observe myself at times. That is where being analytical can be helpful because I'm not always in my feelings.
mm,
I'm sort of married to somebody who's always in their feelings, which is so beautiful and instinctive at every moment, and
yeah.
it's so heart-based, and it really helps balance me, but I can step back and go like, "What are you doing?" Like, to myself. So,
Aw,
one
I love
is
that, though. That's like you all are a
y
balance of yeah,
yeah,
no,
I mean, it's helpful, right, to have someone
yeah,
else where you can sort of help about maybe sort of make suggestions that might be helpful or not,
yeah,
but just or at least offer that for your children, so one person's kind of one and one's the other.
right.
Um, But I think for me is I have a tendency when I get scared, so that shows up as what? That shows up as fear and ego and whatever. And the way I turn that into is I turn that into um, sort of anger or not
Mm,
aggression in a violent way, but I start to lean into everything. And
mhm.
that for me is a number one sign that I'm off because
Mm,
why am I scared? Why am I leaning that hard into stuff? Why am I getting so intense about everything? So that's certainly one.
right.
The other is like at this point in my life, if I'm taking things too personally
Mhm.
or things are bothering me, that shows me that I'm off. Because I
Oh,
should be at a place most times where, hey, the notion of live and let live, or hey, this is just the process. I've been in these things enough times.
mhm.
I've had my ass kicked enough times in business and sport and enough time to be like, oh, yeah, this is all part of it. So when I'm off is when I'm really reacting to it.
Yeah, so that's your signal. That's sort of like, I'm I'm a little out of the line. I'm offline a little bit right now. So what is that enough for you to kinda go, "All right, Gabby, come back to Gabby," or, like, do you have something that kind of like a tangible thing, like, even if it's like, I mean, meditation's maybe a
It
little too
it's a
but
choice. It's a
just a
choice
choice.
in the
Yeah.
moment. What I do is I armor up, right? I get ready for
Mm,
battle. So I
yeah,
over armor up and I'm
yeah,
like, "Okay," and that's great. That's worked really well in a lot of things, but it's,
right.
you know, come on, it's overkill. So it can be, where I'll just go off, like you said, go be by myself. I kinda withdraw from things. I won't That's the other thing I think people do is when they see something, a situation or something happening that aggravates them, some people run for it. They
Yeah,
go right towards it, like, "Yeah, I'm gonna just get in all this." And
yeah,
I go, "You know what? Take a second, move away, get away, just take a second by yourself." And it goes back to this: who am I? Who am I trying to be? And who am I trying to become? What would I do or say that would move me in that direction that's guiding me, not how I feel in this moment? And so I
right.
just step back and go, "Okay, who are you? Who are you trying to be? And who are you trying to become?" And just make those choices. And the answer comes to us when we're honest with ourselves. We know.
It does. We always know. That's that, like, gut, heart, I don't know. It's when everything kind of aligns with,
Yeah.
like, yeah. I love that I am talking to you, like, I'm kind of interviewing you about your me time, but I feel like I am also learning so much about how to reset in me time. No, I mean, truly. Do you have like, anything that you do, I mean, you have so many things I know that you're sort of doing and, like, work-wise, and you're a mother, and it sounds like even in your relationship, you all have, as you brought up a couple of, like, I think you said we did the work, or, like, we got through a couple of,
Oh, yeah. Well,
yeah.
we've stepped on our toes pretty nicely a couple of times learning how to
Mm.
dance. It's like I was not a great communicator early in our marriage. I wasn't a good, I didn't know how to have, like, positive confrontation because I was always very stoic based on how I grew up.
Right.
So, I didn't like, Laird said to me one time we had a pretty rough patch when I met 23 years ago or something, and when we were going through it, he said to me, "Well, why didn't you say anything?" And I was like, "Oh, there's always that." He's like, "Why didn't
Oh,
you say anything?"
communicate.
Right,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's true vulnerability. See, the
Right.
thing is I didn't wanna be truly vulnerable
Yeah.
because I was scared, and so you realize if you're going to love anyone, it's all risk. It just is.
Wow.
So
Wow.
what's the alternative, right?
Yeah.
And so, that was helpful, and listen, I can put it in one very simple nutshell for me personally, my real me time
Yeah.
is is my training.
So, okay. And how you train every day?
Not every day. I mean,
Okay.
I train, and when I go, I try to go, 5, 6 days a week, but if you said to me, "Hey, what is your real me time?"
Yep.
Yes, I enjoy every 3 weeks to get my nails done, because it's sort of like I walk around in sweaty, gross clothes all the time, so at least I look down at my nails and go, "Oh, your hands, they look like something's together."
Yeah.
'Cause, like, sometimes, you feel like you're just, all over the place, and so I like that, but training is the thing because it centers me. I know it's honest. Like, it's hard
Mhm.
work, and I know it's something very good for me.
Mhm.
So my real me time, in that deepest way would be my time to exercise. Because I also know, and I haven't forgotten this even though it's been a lot of years, what a gift to me that I have time and an opportunity and access to work out.
Yeah, true, true, and but it's also something you give yourself, like, that is something you make your time for so that you can be you can be you. You can be your best version of you too, but I understand too that that is, it it's not easy for everyone to find the time,
No.
like, to do that. Yeah,
No,
it
and
it
maybe they weren't encouraged, like, I was encouraged to be an athlete younger, so I got into the gear early. I think for a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, I don't know how to do that." So, I really honor that, and also I've had a lot of injuries playing sports, so
mm,
I don't need to lose my health to know, because there are days where you're like, "I almost need help getting off the toilet because my knee is so bad," right? So,
oh,
it's like, I don't need that understanding of kind of the all the little things to value
right,
that we do
right,
take for
right,
granted.
right.
Um, so I think that's sort of inherently built in there. And another kind of me time thing, which is I think a lot of people use it. I really enjoy having people in my home and cooking for them and breaking bread. So
Mhm.
that's something that I really have always honored in myself, that I really enjoy that with people.
I love that. Do you have a favorite thing that you love to make that's just like, "Ah, this is I'm so excited I get to make this for everyone tonight."
No, I mean we cook a lot.
Yeah.
I've been in an almost 28-year relationship, so I mean
I remember when you
I
all
mean,
I look,
I have cooked a lot. My favorite is, like, everything comes out good, perfect, and at the same time, you're just like, "There
okay.
we go."
Yeah, so it's really funny, I remember you I mean, I love that you were like, "Where was I born?" I'm an 80 I'm 1980s. I was from
Okay.
43 and 4
You're
days.
doing good, you're
I
doing good.
but thank you. But, I remember, a long time ago, this is just a total side note of I spent a lot of time in Malibu, like, well, I had a boyfriend who was a surfer, and so I was out there a lot, and we would see Laird go out in the mornings doing his, like, paddle boarding, and I was already a fan of you. I remember when you all met, like, I remember the whole story, so yeah. Anyway, and I love that you keep saying you're like, "Yeah, we've been cooking for 23 years. We have lots of recipes. We have lots of meals we've made." But now I'm like, "Well, I wanna come over for dinner. What are you making?"
I can
What
go.
can I
I have friends who came over the other night who are vegetarian, so I made them a curry, veggie stew, and then I had animal protein on for the
Mm,
other
yeah,
people. So, whatever direction we have to go in, I
yeah,
honor it. Just this idea of sharing time with people, because I realize life is so busy, and I get very focused on my work and my family that I'm like, I'm always reminded, hey, you've got to make the effort to spend time with the people that you love, because it's so easy for that not to happen.
yeah, and it's easy to I mean, I hate to say this, but I feel like I go in and out of this habit, but, like, to break plans because it's very easy to say, "I'm tired." It's very easy to say, "I'm busy." It's very easy,
Yeah.
but, like, it's so important. I'm also realizing this as I get older, I feel like I've gone through some very flaky phases in my life,
Yeah.
that I'm like, one of the things I'm working very hard on at this point is, like, don't just how important what you're talking about is, that time that you get to have together, because sometimes it's like I have a group of friends, we're like best friends, but we still only get to see each other maybe 4 or 5, 6 times a year. Like,
Yeah.
it's just hard, but you
Yeah.
gotta keep those plans when you make them because it's so important.
Listen, it takes effort. Like, there's more groceries, there's more dishes, there's more whatever.
Yeah,
But the thing that you get fed as a human being, you go to bed a little later, you do a
yeah,
little extra work. This is the real stuff of life. These connections, just those moments.
that's it. It actually is, which I think is the thing too, as we get older, we're like, "Wait, this is it. This is all there is in the end. Like, this is what matters."
Yeah.
Um you mentioned that you got into sports very, very young, very early. At what point did you say like, "Oh, I'm like I think you said you started training very young too. What made you start? Was it just that people were saying like you should meet this person, be an athlete like you said you found your sort of team and tribe that way? Or was it even before where you were like I really love X, running,
Yeah.
training, being physical, being in dirt, I don't know, sand.
I mean, I had an element of being a tomboy, but not overtly,
Mhm.
growing up. And what happened is I had dabbled a little bit in volleyball when I grew up in the Caribbean, in the Virgin Islands. And then my junior year, my mother and I moved to Florida. So I went to a very small school in St. Petersburg, Florida, very small.
Wow.
Keswick. So when I walked in as a junior at 6'3", they were like, "Oh, you're gonna be on the sports teams."
Right.
And so I sort of was like, I played a little volleyball. I never had played basketball. And there were some really incredible coaches and adults that supported me. And that sort of parlayed into going and getting offers to play in college, which I was not expecting. I never planned on.
Mhm.
And then my coach in college, who's still a very dear friend of mine, had a very profound impact on me.
Mm.
Uh, pushed me very hard, but was really looking out for me as a person before an athlete. When they say student athlete, she really did that.
Wow.
And so then that's kept my love for the sport going, and then that's why I decided to play professionally. And so it was really when I say I stumbled into it, I did. Um, and there's people a lot more kind of jockey than me, I'd say. I think I'm very coachable and I like who I am, in a hardworking environment because
Yeah.
simultaneously, when I was in college, I started working in fashion, and that's even though that's great and it's work, it's still a lot of kind of smoke and mirrors.
Mm.
So and it's not like it's not objective. It's not like, well, you worked harder today, so it's sort of like, yeah, you fit the role and you're going to get the job. It's like, okay.
Right.
So I also like this idea of having something within my control. So if I worked harder at something in volleyball, chances are I was going to improve.
Yeah.
And that made me respect myself,
Yeah.
that kind
Yeah.
of environment. So I think that a lot of that for me was attached to sport. Besides,
Right.
listen, it's a lot of fun. It is really hard.
Yeah.
And you get,
Yeah.
you're with your teammates, you kind of go into battle together, mini battle. You fight, you win, you lose, you do it all. And it's great.
I love that. Did you have any and do you still have any, like, say before a game, say before anything, like a ritual or anything that you did that you like superstition-wise or anything like that, that was like, "All right, oh crap, I forgot to blah, blah, blah." Anyway, I wanna hear about those now and then.
I sort of developed that more in the pros,
Mhm.
where I sort of would go through this ritual to kind of get me into the more of the headspace. So if I knew like we were playing next, sort of a certain period of time before we would warm up, I would start to like, okay, I put sunblock on, and then okay, I put my hair in a ponytail, and then I put my visor on, and then once I put my glasses on, because you're playing beach volleyball, so you're outdoors.
Mhm.
This was sort of like changing from one part of your gearing to another part. And then, I'd go out on the court, and our coaches taught this, like you run around the court and you sort of try to take a form of ownership of the court, like, "This is where I'm playing,"
Mhm.
be like a dog, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
And
territory.
so I
Yep.
sort of would just try 'cause it wasn't the most natural thing for me to be, to be competitive. I am very competitive, but I wouldn't say it's the most natural thing. So I had to kind of work myself into that side of my personality. So I use that
Interesting.
ritual.
Wow.
So
Really?
if I played really good with that visor on, as ridiculous as it is, I would play the whole tournament with that visor on, and it was gross, right? If I
But
played really badly, that visor was given away, even the hair tie was gone, and we started new. So I
yeah.
had weird things that I wouldn't encourage people to get into too much of that,
Yeah.
because you don't wanna do that, but I did have a little bit of it.
I love that. I actually do you have anything now, although, just in your life now that you do, like, whether it's like, meditation, whether it's I don't know, any sort of ritually thing that you do now that's like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this and set an intention for the day," or this pray I don't know, whatever that might be.
It's not as deliberate, but when I wake up in the morning,
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't say I'm pretty even keeled, but I wouldn't say I'm like a cheerful person. Or like, let's get the day. It's there's a
You're
part
not
of
a
me
happy
that's
Friday person?
yeah, I wish I had more of that, but I also realize there's other people in my home living with me, so I'm trying. So when Laird gets up before me, so when I'm awake in the morning, I'm by myself in our room. He's long, he's been awake for an hour at least, and before I put my feet on the floor, I always make a really conscious effort about sort of an attitude, tone, and adjustment. So I
Mm,
I I honor, like, maybe I'm like, "Ugh, the day." Like, sometimes you get tired or,
yeah,
when you have younger kids and they're sort of like here that they're coming, they're awake, they're, like, in your space. It's just sometimes you don't get that space. So
yeah,
what I really try to do is take that moment to honor every single thing I'm feeling, whatever it is, and then say, "Right. Who am I trying to be?
right,
Where am I trying to go? And
right,
what person, what part of yourself can show up?" And then
right,
when I put my feet on the floor, it's like, "Okay, here we go." And
yeah.
so I do that every morning, and it's the same with training. I wanna remind people, nobody is, like, excited and can't wait and in a chipper mood. Some people get there easier than others, but a lot of it is a practice. And what I know to be true after all these years is we can have all the information and we can know what we're supposed to be doing. But if we
Mm,
don't have a practice, if we don't have a strategy, if we don't have bumpers and guardrails to help us, sort of execute these practices, it doesn't matter who you are. You're not going to get where you're hoping to get. So knowing it isn't enough. It's putting it in practice, putting it in play, and then, just working on it each day.
that's so I feel like that's just a great philosophy on everything. I feel like, what one of the things I said was, like, whether it's, like, a prayer intention or a candle or whatever, I
Yeah.
think a lot of times we have that, like, "Oh, I'm just gonna put this thing into the universe and leave it and hope that it comes back or happens," but there has to be momentum, there has to be practice, there has to be that sort of work and commitment to that. But there is, I do think, is you're saying when you're reminding yourself those questions in the morning or putting your feet on the ground, that if you do that in repetition, you do start to kind of know and align with it faster and faster and faster and faster,
Yeah.
so that it's five, you wake up, it's a thought, it's a thing, and then you're on your day, but at least you've started with the intention of, like, I'm gonna be, exactly what you said, whatever the adjustment is that you have to make in the morning to, like, set the day.
Yeah.
It's yeah. Um, this is
I
I
think
love
I think for
yeah.
a lot of people, this is when they talk about gratitude, right? I'm
Yes,
I'm a little different in that way, but I think for a lot of people, especially, it's a gratitude practice. What am I
right.
grateful for? And
Yeah,
okay, here we go. So I
yeah.
I think it's no different. Uh I try to do it easier. I have a tendency to at times muscle things a little bit.
Mm,
And that's sort of who I am.
like
But for
force
a lot of
like,
people, it could be
push
like,
yeah, uh-huh.
I'm grateful.
Yes. Yeah, no, I get that. All right, so I also wanna ask you, well, this is what I ask everybody, but, 3 of your favorite things right now that you cannot live without or more, but let's say 3. And then I wanna also ask you what's a nice thing you did for yourself recently? We can do whatever
Okay.
order you want.
So
Yeah.
3 things. Okay. Well, God, I see it's so funny because
A thing person?
I have one of my daughters is very much a thing person, and she's like, "You're so practical." And I'm like, "Okay."
That's
Um,
great quality, though. That's
yeah,
like
I know, but for her, she's like, "Come on, lady, pick it up." I would say,
literally could be like food, coffee, your
okay, so
morning
well, I do have my morning coffee. So what my husband does that's so incredible is he puts all the ingredients that I use in my coffee in my cup every morning. So when I come down, he
Oh,
either hits the button, the coffee goes in, and we have the creamers, and I do put some fat in there and some other things. So I do start my day like that. Um, I am wearing, and I'm not trying to be selly, but I do
so
train. No, well, I'm trying to be careful about that. That's kind of why I went, is, we have a company called Laird Apparel, and we made a woman's tight, and I helped design the tight, and because I know what you need for to work out in a workout pant,
Yeah.
they actually got it right. So it's snug, it doesn't sag, it holds everything in, your butt looks fine if you have to do kettlebell snaps, like the whole 9 yards. So, if you said to me for right now for my training, I will tell you that this performance tight is really badass. So
Oh, I wanna
there's
try it.
that.
I want it. Yeah, I wanna try it. Oh my god, I love this. I'm I'm actually looking for new workout clothes, so this is great.
Yeah, so we had Laird's line and then we designed a woman's line. So I really enjoy that. And then y- as far as I mean, we have a sauna. We're
Mhm.
lucky.
Mhm.
So if I get the chance maybe a couple times a week to go in there. Superficially on a skincare level, I've been using something called Radical Skincare. So it doesn't have a lot of weird chemicals in it, but it does
Uh-huh.
make your skin good because it's that fine line, right? Between like, oh, it's natural, but yeah, great. It doesn't do anything. Like it's all
Right.
that as
Of
women.
course. Yes.
So I really like that. I wash my face with a Japanese charcoal soap and it gets all the
What?
makeup off. Yeah. You can
What's a
find it.
charcoal soap? I don't
It's
know
just
this.
this gray. You can go on Amazon and get it. It doesn't really cost that much. I've been using it for a long time and it seems to work. And so it gets all your makeup off, but it doesn't feel so hard on your skin, but it does
Wow.
feel clean. So if you go onto Amazon, they just look up Japanese charcoal soap, and that is something that I
I'm
that
getting it.
I
I'm getting
use.
everything you're talking about right now. I just want this all sounds wonderful. Okay, Japanese charcoal soap, okay. Radical skincare, love.
Yes. So I think that's it. And by the way, yes, I work with Laird Apparel and yes, I work with Laird Superfood, but the other stuff I don't have anything to do with them. And then on a side note, and this is just overly practical, I just want to encourage people because you know more and more, your vitamin D, your vitamin
Mhm,
C,
mhm.
sometimes for certain women, a multi iron supplement. I have to take that. I have very low iron, and so I do those types of practices that also I think support my overall, put some buoyancy to my health. It's not a magic bullet, but I would also say that as far as a practice goes, that's something
Mhm.
I do.
I love that. My doctor did say that to me the other day. He's like, "Are you taking a multivitamin?" And I was like, "I'm not." I feel, like, embarrassed to almost say that. Like, I might take a couple of things, like, I take calcium because osteoporosis runs in
Yeah.
our family and, like, whatever, but just he's like, "You should take a multivitamin every single day."
Yeah, and
Um,
magnesium because we have 72 processes in the body that are connected to magnesium. So I would say also maybe magnesium before you go to bed is always
uh,
helpful.
also.
And so I try not to get too crazy with it, but I do know that it's helpful and certainly an omega. I find it even helps with my skin because as much as I am practical, of course I have a level of vanity like everybody, and so
Yeah.
it's just trying to keep it together.
I love that you're like, I'm not trying to sell things." I'm like, "You're on this podcast, sell it all."
No, but I'm not I want to I'm not putting the cart
I
before the horse, like, if I say it, it's 'cause I genuinely mean it, and the other final thing, and I'm not sure if your audience is more female or not, what I
okay.
have learned over and over and over again is, we don't eat enough protein,
Mhm.
and so it's really important to get protein. They say as we get older, women need more protein and men need more fiber, so that's kind of it.
Okay. I all of this. I am even taking like I said, I feel like in a way I'm interviewing you about your me time, but I feel like I'm learning so much as well in the process. So this feels
Yeah.
like this is my me time and
Yeah.
Gabby's me time that we're having. And then I love the favorite things. If you have anything else you want to add. But also I love knowing um what is a nice thing and that you did for yourself, recently that you were like, "Oh, this was like a gift I'm giving to myself," or something, whether a splurge or whether just like a moment?
That's a great question. I feel like my whole life is a splurge in a way, you know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like, I get to live in a a nice place in California. We live in Kauai. I guess maybe that's why I don't feel I went on a trip actually with my family recently to Europe on a boat with some friends, and that was really really nice because there was no reason why except to see our friends.
Yeah.
Normally, I'm like, "Well, I'll go there because we're gonna work, and then we can stay an extra day." I'm that person.
Right.
And so we just went, and I thought, "Oh, that's important to do sometimes." I've never been always so good at that.
You went to Italy, you said?
Yeah, we flew into France, and then we went on a boat for a few days, and then we flew out. So, I guess the sake of just taking a trip to take a trip, I know you'd think I would be a person who would probably do that more often than you think, but it's always attached to a reason, like, "Oh, we're
Right.
gonna work there, or we have an appearance there, or something." And
That out
so,
of guilt, or is that out of, like, just how you're built? Is that out of, like, if I'm doing something like this nice, I should have a reason or work or something to accomplish while I'm there? Or is
yeah.
okay,
It's
yeah.
a terrible quality and that I'm working on, and my youngest daughter always, like she'll say to me, "Well, don't you ever think about just doing something to do it, just to do that?" And I'm always like,
Mhm.
"Oh, that's interesting."
I love that your
So
daughter I love these conversations that you all have. I love that she's trying to, like, be like, "Mom, stop being so practical. Just be."
but there's something to be said for letting go of the reins, it can be disguised as like, "Wow, that's okay, that's productive." It's like,
Yeah,
yes, but also let go of the reins a little bit, and I think that we can know ourselves which is which,
right.
and do that. So, yeah. If I have to say one of my biggest things is, like, anytime I can redo anything in my house, this is my biggest, like, you
Really?
know what I mean? Like, I love, like, let's repaint something, let's reupholster something, I could let's.
Really?
Oh my god, like, if for me to have, like, my environment just like that for me is like the woof.
Are you like a declutter person? Are you like a, "I need it
Definitely.
minimal"? Okay, I love that. I love that.
Yeah,
That's
because
good.
the visual noise makes my brain crazy, and since I am doing a lot of different things like everybody is,
Yeah.
I am just so much more streamlined and productive, when I can just have things clear, and stuff takes energy. I don't wanna be beholden so much to my stuff.
Yeah, no, I get that. I'm sort of in this process. I just moved and in this
Oh,
place that I've been talking a lot about it, just this idea of, like, these things we hold on to, but why? And do these things, let's say
yeah,
the one I was talking about last week, these, like, shoe boxes almost of mementos, memories, keepsakes that take up space in the closet. We don't need to see them all the time. They trigger memories. Is that good? Especially if they're from relationships, say you're not in anymore or what, like, this is a question I've been like, because I just moved and I'm like, Mags, it's time. You're gonna go through all of this. It's like 15 years worth of stuff. My mom
yeah,
has sent me boxes. I have I was married for a minute, that box, I have this
yeah,
other relationship, like, whatever, and I go through it and I was like, all of this has gotta go, and then I'm like, or does it, and what is the point? What do I get from holding on to it, and what am I saying by letting go of it?
yeah,
And yeah, it's like it's always such an interesting thing. So I'm very, I've purged quite a bit, and I
yeah,
definitely feel lighter, even just knowing when it's in a closet. Like, even if you don't see the clutter, even if it's not the visual noise, even if it's
right,
the knowing that it's there, it's like, I don't wanna open that door. If I cringe every time I walk by the door, it's
yeah,
gonna, like, affect my day
yeah.
and
Well, and
life.
I think unless you're gonna give it to somebody, like, there's something in that that is going to be for somebody for later, or if there's one letter and you go, "That was really bittersweet, I'm gonna save one of the letters of the thing," and then you can get
Yeah.
rid of the rest. My husband told me that pretty much, and we have a good size home, but he goes, "Listen, if we died tomorrow, they could take all of this and smash it down and put it in 2 dumpsters."
Wow.
And it's like, "Oh, okay." You know what I mean? Like, I think we put all this gravity into things,
Me
except
too.
it's really us and the people we love, and you wanna have a good bed and a good pillow so you can sleep well, it's sort of
Yes.
like, what do you really need?
And it's all
But
in
it's
it is in our hearts, like, it is in our like, the memories or whatever that is that make up
yeah,
who we are, these pieces and these people and these experiences and, like, whatever, they do, like, live. They live. So
yeah,
it's the tangible thing of it is like, what do we I love what you're saying. I sort of practice that, but I would've if this interview had happened like 3 weeks ago, I would have been like, "Ah." So now I wanna go back through again and just
Sure.
feel like I'm giving the one letter. I don't need 10. I don't need all of them, but anyway,
Right.
uh,
There's a book, Light Watkins wrote a book. He's right now living out of a backpack for the last 5 years, and,
mhm.
he wrote a book called Travel Light, and he talks sort of about some of this, so it's sort of
Oh, I love
interesting.
that. I love that. I'm learning so much today. Okay, so can we sell for a second? Can we sell your podcast?
Oh,
The
thank you.
Gabby Reece Show, yes, which we
Very
talked a little
original.
bit about what inspired. Very, very original. Wait,
The
are
Gabby
you,
Reece Show.
downplaying? No, I love it, but, like, what
What's the
I wanna listen to
title?
the Gabby Reece Show. I wanna know about the Gabby Reece Show. Why would like, it's the perfect title. I'm turning into your, like, daughter now, being like, "Mom, sell yourself."
I my whole thing is this, I like performance,
Yeah,
I obviously I like high performance, whether it's business or training or even trying to as a human being trying to show up.
yeah,
However, when if you choose to be on the path, as a as a partner, as a mother, as a wife, or not, it doesn't matter. It's for me, a lot of times performance is occupied by voices that sort of talk so intensely about performance, but how do we put the human element or the human reality within performance and then take the best information from scientists or doctors or personalities and
mhm.
break it down to basically like a third, sixth grade level? Because my hope for people is they hear something and they go, "Okay, that I could do that." And that's actionable.
Yeah,
And what I've learned from all of these people is most of the ones who are very good at getting any of us to perform better in whichever way, even if it's about communication, it's not about adding more things into your practice. It's about taking away the things that keep us from the success. And usually the best people, they keep saying they're not
wow.
adding more. They're saying, okay, let's take away. So I just want to be a part of that conversation and disseminating that information. And if I can help, sort of my brothers and sisters do it better, with the notion of really the undercurrent, though, is sort of these are some of the best people in their space for real.
Yeah.
That's my hope, and just to offer perspectives. I'm not here to tell people what to do. I'm here to throw out information, and somebody goes, "Oh, I'll take that, and I'll take this. I'll leave that. I'll take this," and that's going to help me.
I love that. I also love this idea of taking things away versus, like, the adding in, like, the obstacles, like, the mental obstacles, and I think that's sort of maybe what you're talking about, but maybe it is actual physical things as well.
Both
Like, yeah, but that is more valuable, or I feel like what gets in the way, what can be preventative more than, the, "I need to do more, I need to add
doesn't
more,
work.
spend more money to on the things, spend the like, whatever it is." Yeah,
It
fascinating.
doesn't work.
Yeah,
So,
it
yeah.
does. I love that. Is there anything else about Gabby Reese's me time that you wanna share? Or, I mean, I again, like, this has just been, I absolutely love talking to you. Yes.
Okay, I will share one last thing.
Okay, share
Just
everything.
just to remind this is just again an invitation to remind people. I've done, I don't know how many shows, maybe close to 200 or something like that. And what
Mhm,
I will tell you in health, there's sort of 4 things. There is we'll go easiest first, connection. Okay,
mhm,
you can do all the right things, and that means connection with yourself and obviously connections with other people. Your gut. If we can figure out how our gut's sort of doing, and I mean that on an intuitive level and the health of our microbiome.
mhm,
If we are able to sort of not be in a chronic state of inflammation. And lastly, um, well, there's 2 more things. Mitochondrial function, so if your cells can communicate well,
mhm.
your batteries of your cells, everything communicating well. And finally, that people can get a test to see if they're insulin sensitive, because that's something we really want to maintain. People are wearing glucose monitors, but that's not always a reflection if your insulin is regulated. They'll say, "Okay, I noticed this," and that's good. But
Yeah.
you can go to your doctor, I think it's like $20. I think I forget the test. It's like CPI or something like that to
Mhm,
see if you're insulin sensitive. So for me, my whole thing is how do we keep people as healthy as possible? And what shows up over and over, whether I'm talking to a psychiatrist or a GI specialist or, somebody who's studying human behavior, from the Harvard study, it's kind of those things over and over and over. So
Right.
I just want to remind people in a world where it feels so confusing, though, if we could simplify it down to that, so we eat in a way that we maintain our chronic inflammation, our insulin sensitivity. We get tests to see that, and making sure that we're loving ourselves and someone else, and
Mhm.
just staying on top of that instead of, it's daunting. So I just want to remind people of that, because if you want to talk about me time, that would be probably valuable time,
I
to
love that,
to-
'cause that's, like, the holistic part of it, right? It's like
yeah,
you can have your rituals and you can have your quiet time, you can have
yeah,
your alone you can have the things that you do, but if this being that we're in
yeah,
is not operating on its optimal level, then
right,
none of that's gonna totally connect.
yeah,
So, I love that, and I think I do get overwhelmed. I'm one of those people that can get, like,
it's
there's
normal.
so much information.
It's
There's
normal.
so Yeah, but to simplify it like that, it makes sense. It's like everything is working together
Yeah,
and making sure it's working on an optimal level. I didn't know about that test. I
yeah.
would I need that
There's
test.
a gentleman named Dr. Ben Bickman,
Okay,
and he's very good on this topic. So if people want
okay,
to dive deep in it, they can.
okay, I love that. And, great is there can I mean, obviously, you're covering this on your podcast, but is there anything else that we can where else can we follow you in right now? What you have a website, I know.
Yeah, I do. It's Gabby Reece, and then Instagram Gabby Reece. Apparently, I have a TikTok. I think they repurpose some of the stuff we shoot for Instagram. That I might be in over my head on that one.
I love it. You're like, "Apparently, I have a TikTok." I feel the
Yeah,
exact
I do everything. I do the other ones, but I
Okay,
don't do that. But yeah, if people
okay,
want to visit or pick topics on the podcast that interest them,
yeah.
and drop in and see if it can serve them in any way.
I love that. I'm totally gonna post this last bit too of those 4 things that you just said, because I feel like that is a invaluable information.
And none of the
Um,
best experts will ever disagree with each other. They all say exactly the same thing.
that's amazing.
It's great.
And look at me, and I'm still like, I'm overwhelmed, even though I do listen and I do like I follow and I'll read and whatever, I still find myself like, there's
That's the
just
thing.
so much information. Yeah.
Simplify, simplify, simplify.
Yeah, and this is where practicality is, this is where practicality is a gift because that's
Right.
what we need. Yeah,
But we need all the people with all the different ways that they do it to make up
yeah,
the, dynamic kind of array of how life can be lived.
yeah. I love this. I absolutely love talking to you. I wanna have you on again. I feel like I learned so much, and yet I also feel like there are so many topics I wanna go even deeper into, but I'm gonna say today. Oh my
Okay.
god.
Well,
I'm gonna say
thank
today,
you for inviting me. I always appreciate it. Thank you.
this was I've been a fan of you again, and it's like it's very interesting because I remember I remember all of us sort of being like, you became uh there was not that we didn't have a lot of female I mean, just, female
It was just
like
good timing.
athletics.
I think they started to promote more women, for
Yeah, they
sure.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had our star, like, it was you, and then also then when I was out in Malibu for a while, it was like there was Laird and seeing the 2 of you come together, and I'm like, "This" I feel like the power between the 2 of you coming together, like
Oh,
okay, last question. How
okay.
did you meet?
I interviewed Laird for a show called The Extremist.
It was through an interview?
Mhm. Yeah.
And then you left the interview and you were like, "Okay."
Mm, not
No.
exact I don't know. Yeah, after the conversation, because neither one of us are the type of person to look at somebody and be like, "Oh," so it was
Sure.
sort of after the conversation, and, on paper, it was not really a great idea, but there's something deep inside of me that I thought, "Oh, I think that's my guy."
On paper, why do you say that it wasn't a good idea?
Oh, it was very complicated.
Okay.
I lived in California, Laird lived in Hawaii. He was coming out of a difficult marriage. There was
Mm,
a very small child involved. It was very,
mm,
very difficult. So,
okay.
my oldest daughter at the time was very young, but it's all worked out, and I have a very good relationship with my daughter and his ex-wife, and it all worked out, but it was not like, "Oh, that's a great idea."
And yet you were like, "I think that's my guy." I
Yeah,
love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, good. We end on a little note of love. Yes, Gabby, you're
Thank you.
just like, I can't thank you enough for doing the podcast and also for being so open
Anytime.
and sharing all of this and also enlightening us a lot as well.
Hey, we're all in it together, so we
Yeah,
gotta help each other.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much. This helps. Okay.
Aloha.